Cat, you have Crosswind's coming out.
Mm-hmm.
What's the date? What's the official date it's coming
June
out?
21st.
June 21st.
Order cutoff is next week, I believe the 29th.
Okay.
So order it.
And if you could just kind of give your fans and all the other comic book fans out there, like, what's the sales pitch on Cross?
Sales pitch on Crosswind. Well, we've been saying it's Freaky Friday meets Goodfellas, which is enticing enough to get my interest. But we've got a hitman for the mob in Chicago who's very good at what he does, very confident, gets respect wherever he goes. He's moneyed. And then we have a Seattle housewife whose husband's abusive, whose stepson has no respect for her at all, and she gets harassed on a regular basis by the high school kids on the street. She has no confidence in herself whatsoever. And one day they switch. In Freaky Friday, they switch. He wakes up in the middle of what her crisis would be, is that she has to make a perfect dinner for her husband's boss, or she gets it. She wakes up in his body where he was in the middle of a botched interrogation where the mob boss's son actually killed the guy he was supposed to just talk to. And they're figuring out how to get rid of the body. So she wakes up there, and he wakes up over here. Both are completely fish out of water. He's trapped in this domestic world that he knows nothing about, and she's obviously in this mob world she knows nothing about. So they both have to figure out why they're there, figure out what happened, but also not get caught. They still have to be this person and convince people they're this person, all while figuring out what's going on. So.
And Gail Simone is the writer.
Gail Simone is the writer.
And did she pitch this book to you, or was it more of a conversation where you guys generated the idea?
She had the idea. Then she came to me and said, I have this idea for this book, and before she finished even telling me about it, I was like, yes. As soon as she said crime book, I was like, yes, I'm in. And then we went back and forth a little bit, and she sent me some ideas for what she thought the characters would look like, and I did some character sketches, and we were in.
And then you mentioned that it takes place in Chicago and also takes place in Seattle.
He lives in Chicago, she lives in the suburbs of Seattle.
And then, so what is... I'm assuming you're not from Chicago. So how did you just look at photos for art? Or, I mean, I've been there.
I've been to Chicago
it's pretty iconic.
Times. Yeah, and every time I go to cities, I will take a camera, which now is my phone, and just take pictures, of anything, landscapes, just references. Because, like you said, you never know when you need them. So I just had a bunch of material from stuff, and then I, look up stuff too. So, yeah.
And so you have a male hopping in a female's body, and then a female hopping in a male's body.
Right.
Had you ever drawn anything where you had to interpret the opposite person differently in artwork?
Not really. No. This was an unusual and interesting challenge. This book relies so heavily on me being able to portray the acting as well as I possibly can. Like, you have to believe that this is her in his body, and you have to believe that that's him in her body. And so it's an incredible study in human behavior for me, which is something I always kind of do anyway, but I have to study the way a man will carry himself versus the way a woman will carry himself. Then when I switch, I have to display a man's mannerisms in her body and her mannerisms in his body. And I've given myself a list of attributes for each one of them, little habit things they would do, so that the reader knows who is who at what point.
And you're going for more detail as opposed to maybe the generic man spreading kind of thing.
There's a little bit of that too. I mean, when he sits down, he sits down, but and he's used to being respected, so he's very like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no trouble like smacking people upside the head, and so everyone's just like, what are you doing? So and she's like a deer in headlights the whole time, so she's like this the whole time. What am I in? And she's never held a gun before.
Do you do like the big eyes? Like,
oh, yeah.
Like it's...
Oh yeah. I mean that's what you would do. You wake up in this room and you're like, oh my god. But it was funny. It's like when they first switch, I tried to think what would. I mean, Gail had some, he looks at she looks at his hands and is like, what is this? They're looking at each other in the mirror, themselves in the mirror, going, ooh, what? But then I was thinking, what would a guy do? What's the first thing a guy would do? He'd be like, boobs.
Right.
So I have him in her body. First thing he does is like, what? And he's like, what? So I put some humor into it as well, But then there's subtle things like for her, she looks at her hands and it's not her hands, but a woman would hold her hands differently than a guy. A guy would be like, more like this, whereas women would like cock their wrist a little bit. So there's little things like that. I even have her left-handed, he's right-handed. So it's like.
And how much room did Gail give you as far as interpreting her script? Because I know that through the panels this weekend, we've heard that some people are really tight-knit on scripts, and some people are standoffish. She's been
letting me kind of. She gives me the general, and then she lets me run with it, which is really nice. I've been in both situations where the script has been very, dictated, and then other situations where I've been able to go. But this is really fun because I'm really, really getting to create this world.
And the first time I ever heard it was yesterday with Greg Capullo. He's like, you're the writer, I'm the director. Like, right. Do you feel like you're the director and you kind of have this vision of what the book should like?
Yeah, I've heard people make the movie analogy thing before, and to some degree it works. I think that is probably pretty apt. I mean, she does have some direction, but I guess it is the same as like a script. A script's gonna have, the setting, exterior, blah blah blah, interior, blah blah blah. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of like they set the scene and then I run. So I guess it's the same type thing as a director would be.
And then, I mean, the
director, actor, costume person, set designer, yeah.
The industry has changed since I started reading comic books in like '88. Just drastically. I mean, like now we have Gail, Simone, and you working on a book, which never would have happened in 20 years ago, kind of thing. Yeah. Like, is there like an added pressure in this kind of industry to always turn out like the top notch, or how do you?
I don't know if it's any added pressure because I put a lot of pressure on myself anyway. This is for me the first time I've been in charge of all the inside. I've done pencils, inks, but I've never done pencil ink and colors before. So I've really been working hard. I can't let the outside pressure of will this be good get in my head, or I'll never get anything done. I'll just talk myself out of doing it. Well, it's too much. I just won't do it. So.
And okay, so the first issue comes out. What page or panel is the panel that we should like look at? That you're like, you know what, I rock this one
in
right
the first issue?
First issue. I know that you're like on issue 5 or
now. I'm trying to, now I don't want to get issues confused. I think my favorite, it's hard to say panel. My favorite pages are towards the end when they switch. That's where I really had a lot of fun. Putting in little jokes for myself. I think those are I think in the first issue those are the pages that I really like. I love when they switch and they're first, it's just like, oh my god, and he's like this, and I those are my favorites, I think, in the first issue.
One more time, when's the book coming out?
June 21st. Order cutoff is next week. Go get it.